Lawyers of Reddit, which fictional villain would you have the easiest time defending? Robbie Rotten. I mean, his crimes mostly just are not. The only actual crime I can remember off the top of my head was the time he snuck onto Sporticus' blimp and started ducking around with it. Trespassing. Grand theft auto, if that even applies to blimps. Probably grand larceny, if it does not. Reckless driving. And probably other related charges. Does Dr. Doom need legal defense? As the ruler of his own country, does diplomatic immunity cover all of his actions? Pretty much. That is how he keeps getting away with things in the comics. He is the legal sovereign leader of a respected modern country, so cannot be arrested for fear of provoking a war. They did try a few times replacing him with someone who has a better legal right to the country, but they always turn out to crazy tyrants as opposed to Doom, who is generally an at least a reasonable dictator, so usually he either wins it back, as opposed to Doom, who is generally an at least reasonable dictators. Doom is a dick to everyone outside of Latveria, but by all accounts Latveria is a pretty nice place to live, if you do not mind the autocracy. Oh yeah. Provided you can put up with his egotism and restrictions. The overall standard of living seems pretty good. The trains are almost certainly running on time. Plus before Doom it was a backwater tiny Eastern European nation that had changed hands every few decades to increasing worse options. Now it's a major global superpower with some of the most advanced technology on the planet. Whatever your opinion of Doom personally, on some level that must feel good. Most of the old school Scooby-Doo villains, they did not really do anything other than scare people off of private property. When I was a kid I remember being devastated in the movie Big Daddy when the social worker took Zach and Cody away from Adam Sandler. But after watching it again as an adult, although still sad, I'm thinking yeah, of ducking course they are going to take him away from this stranger. So the social worker from Big Daddy is a layup case. Definition: Lex Luthor. 99% of the time uses henchmen who would not talk, and he can definition pay my exorbitant bills. Mojo Jojo. This one is good, because typically animals can't commit crimes. They have to establish his legal personhood first. Animals may not be capable of committing crimes, but then they have no civil rights either, such as a right to a trial, or to legal representation. If you rely on non-personhood as a defense, he gets sent to a zoo at best, or at worst put down. It is the defense that wants to prove personhood, not the state. In this case though, nothing really incentivizes a supervillain to not just kill anyone who tries to kill him. I did argue that if his crimes ever do go to trial, then it is at least in part because he agrees to a fair trial and his personhood is already agreed upon. Otherwise it never goes to trial, because they are too busy trying to kill each other. Lawyer here. Light from Death Note. The guy likes to write names of dead people in a notebook. So what? Morbid hobby but not illegal. I do not think it is possible to establish a cause-effect nexus between writing a name and people dying, and saying well, it is magic will not hold in court. Even if you could prove the Death Note is a weapon, which is basically what L has to do. Is there any way to absolve Light by putting the blame on the demon? Like parents who leave a gun around the house and a kid finds it and shoots someone. It is the parents' fault for not keeping the dangerous thing away from the lesser being who obviously cannot handle it. That would be complicated. Light is old and mature enough to know what he is doing, and it is not like he writes names by accident, so the blame is 100% on him. But since the demon, what was his name? I cannot remember, has given him the weapon, and he is just looking. He can probably be charged too, depending on the laws that apply. Dr. Doofenshmirtz. All of his inventions ultimately only end up stealing or damaging the creations of two kids. So he could probably be let out with a theft charge. Really? He is just a lonely, unloved man trying to be seen in the world. Good thing he has his therapy platypus. In some cases his inventions could actually benefit society. I am pretty sure there was one episode where someone took one of his innators and it became a machine used by eye doctors to fix eye problems. That did happen, but then he made an innator to do the opposite, so they would go get their eyes fixed, then he would get more royalties checks. True, but it also seems like Alka doesn't want him to be arrested, and so he had sort of a legal immunity. We know that Perry S had collect data on all his invention, so that Alka can replicate them. All his inventions work as intended, he just doesn't use them properly. Think of the leaps and bounds he must have made in the science field, and how his inventions can be put to new use. Not to mention he is completely unaware of the benefit he makes S&D, that he doesn't receive any rewards for his contributions to the scientific world. The Wicked Witch of the West. She was angry at Dorothy, but then again Dorothy dropped a house on her sister, and then grave robbed the witch's sister's body with Glinda's help. The shoes were rightfully the witch's anyway, presuming she was her sister's only heir and her sister died intestate. All the witch wanted was for Dorothy to apologize and return the slippers she stole. Everything else that happened was the result of the witch's reasonable attempts to defend herself and her property against Dorothy's killing, theft, and trespass. I want to defend the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. The Velociraptors are probably sociopaths. They were raised in an alien environment by people who have no idea how their species rears their young, and probably conditioned to act in a certain way for the entertainment of tourists. I'm not surprised they turned out to be aggressive monsters. Rumpelstiltskin did nothing wrong. Yes, came here to say Rumpelstiltskin would have helped if the agreement was in writing. I am also not familiar with adoption laws. I am pretty sure it wouldn't fly in a surrogate situation in my state either, but I know if the contract was for anything legal other than a baby, he'd have a solid case. It is possible that the laws regarding the keeping of children in whatever place the deal was made might have allowed the terms of the deal. It is also possible that such laws did not exist there at all. This is why it is not very practical to make an offense case on fairy tale characters. The laws of the land during the time the events take place are likely to be very different from modern laws. It is not really adoption and they are not objects, so possession would not work either. Since it is a very common theme in fairy tales, I assume it is at least traditionally common, and probably not illegal. Barely anyone objects to those terms. So it seems to be something people do. Might still be illegal, but that seems less likely to me. Just because a lot of people regret it, doesn't he mean trading your firstborn to someone who did you a favor is illegal. For a similar but different example, look at how the law of surprise is handled in The Witcher. Not a villain, but a scruffy looking scoundrel Han Solo. Does not matter if he shot Greedo first, it was self-defense. At least it would be where I live. Your state's laws may vary. Greedo was the one who pulled a gun on Han. Greedo was abducting Han against his will to take to Jabba. A shot called a mob boss on Tatooine, while Han had debts to Jabba. Owing someone money is not necessarily a crime. Define easiest time defending. If you define it as I think they have an easy case to win, then probably Gaston, since hunting a beast that is a threat to members of your town isn't a crime. Remember, Beast did lock up Bella's dad and there's no reason to believe that Beast couldn't go evil again during the inevitable divorce. If you mean the one I am going to most enjoy defending, then pick the richest one. It is the criminal client. Write me a check and don't call me every 10 damn minutes from the jail and I am a happy camper. Willy Wonka. That release was ducking ironclad. I think you'd have a better case as the kid's family's prosecution. Legal Eagle broke down Wonka's wanton legal flaunting, and the dude is a straight up crook. And that contract was anything but ironclad. Making contracts illegible tends to make them rather void. I am pretty sure the other kids were actually the villains in that story, so it is probably even the better choice for this question. It is kind of scary how little of what went on in the Truman Show would actually be illegal in the real world. There is a few fringe cases, most notably actively preventing Truman from leaving once he realized he was in a fake world and expressed a desire to escape, but pretty much everything up to that point is very legal, and it would be hard to press charges against the director or anyone else for the basic premise of raising a child in a reality show without their knowledge. Seems like a very easy case of invasion of privacy. Probably a handful of other niche torts. Maybe unlawful hiring, employment practices, and failing to pay an employee wages. Very good points. And there is actually a great podcast called Ad Absurdum that goes into it in more detail. A lot of this stuff can be gotten around through a couple things. One, the corporation in the movie is Truman's legal parent, and as such can sign away most of his rights on his behalf until he is an adult. 2. It would not be hard to raise Truman to not value his privacy, making it easy to get him to sign it away once he turns 18. 3. They could be paying him a salary and just putting it into an account in his name. Include fine print as his employment contract, which he signed. That includes television appearances. 4. Truman could probably take them to the cleaners in civil court, but it would be hard to stick many criminal charges. Bucky Barnes Winter Soldier. I think the insanity defense, though it is not cult that anymore, would actually apply here. Get a group of certified expert psychiatrists and doctors together. Get their testimony depositions. Set a competency hearing. In the event he is deemed competent, use witness testimony in the USS Hydra documentation to prove he was not in charge of his actions. Boom. Done. Probably Palpatine. Republic law does not apply because he can bend it. Also, as Supreme Chancellor he probably has immunity. Imperial law does not apply either because I assume he isn't ashayable there. And real world law could also be tricky. All his dirty work was done by his students, who are conveniently dead. Good luck proving they did anything on his orders. Being a Sith Lord is not a crime because freedom of religion. His fight against the GD was self-defense, as it was an attack against him with religious motives. Even the killing of Hego Damask would be impossible to prove as there were no witnesses and nobody even know they were on Coruscant together. And the creation of the Empire was approved by the Senate. He did not even abduct Maul. He was given to him. The most realistic thing would be conspiracy, to destroy the Republic or something. But it sounds like a conspiracy theory to claim there was this big Sith rule of 2 thing going on over centuries. And even if it got to trial somehow, if it is a jury trial, the opposition would have a very hard time. As a lawyer, I can guarantee that a Catwoman would present well to a jury. She can even win over Batman. Catwoman never kills, and she is definitely not evil. She mostly commits property crimes and does an occasional good deed. Catwoman also has a tragic and sympathetic backstory. Depending which version you read, she has suffered from catastrophic head injuries, been forced into and escaped from the sex trade, as well as a violent pimp. Growing up, Catwoman lost both her parents, including an abusive father, to suicide and alcohol. She was homeless at times and also confined to harsh conditions at an orphanage. Despite her tough circumstances, she would always go to great lengths to protect her younger sister. These days, she is just trying to get by in a cold, cruel world, and exposing corruption in the process. Easy acquittal. Tougher, but maybe possible to get her a medal for civic achievement. I feel like Ganondorf would be a nice pick. According to the laws of the Hylian world, he is just, like, supposed to be doing evil stuff all the time. The curse has to be fulfilled throughout generations. There is always a hero, an evil person, and a goddess. Kinda like a contract. A theory I like about Ganondorf is that he is as much cursed as in Zelda are. A perpetuous cycle of fights between good and evil, just because one dude thousands of years ago was pissed from losing against a 17-year-old Skyward Sword. He really is as cursed as in Zelda. And unlike either of them, Ganon does not have the bliss of ignorance. He fully remembers dying at least in his timeline every time, and being sealed for centuries. In BOTW, you see Ganon desperately trying to use all of his resources to break the cycle. I'm pretty sure the game says something like he has given up on reincarnation when Ganon goes to full beast form. Yellowjacket from Ant-Man. He killed one dude, but there is zero evidence of that. All he did was use his own company's research to try to create a new weapon. Maybe not particularly moral, but he did not do anything wrong until Lang and Pym stole from him and destroyed his entire office building. After that he did some property damage, but Pym even said that the shrinking tech could affect his mind, so there is a completely reasonable defense that his behavior was affected beyond what he is aware of. Furthermore, since Pym created the tech and knew full well that it could affect the mind and did not do anything to warn Darren Cross about it, it is really his fault. The Joker. Your Honor, my client, who is clearly suffering from schizophrenic delusions and various other mental issues, was punched in the face by a billionaire in a rubber gym suit, and worse. The Gotham City Police Commissioner asked him to do it. I don't think you could save Joker from legal repercussions with the insanity plea. For insanity, your client would need to either not realize what they were doing or not be able to realize that what they are doing is considered wrong by the law. Joker is clearly aware of what he is doing, and he is aware that it is wrong. That said, you could probably get Bruce Wayne charged for vigilantism, and you could probably get Commissioner Gordon fired for working with Batman. An insanity plea doesn't get you out of legal repercussions regardless. It just means you get locked up in a psych ward instead of a normal prison if you're found guilty. And given the fact that Joker always gets sent to Arkham Asylum anyway, we can conclude that his lawyers are already using a psych defense. Arkham was a pretty sorry excuse for a mental hospital. It was basically Guantanamo Bay with worse security. Not to mention the several staff members who became criminally insane and committed horrendous crimes. Dr. Harleen Quinzel Harley Quinn, Dr. Jonathan Crane Scarecrow, or Dr. Amadeus Arkham, who euthanized his own mother and hacked his workers to pieces with an axe. Not to mention they put Falcone away at Arkham, who seemed pretty well aware of his actions. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.